MX-5s are rusty cars, so today I'm going to be undersealing mine to give it a little bit more protection against rust. So here we are, we're getting her up onto the lift and she is super excited. She's giving us a little wink here to let us know. So we have the car up in the air now, so we're going to take a look underneath and see what is actually wrong with it. Hopefully nothing. It is a UK model car. Japanese ones are obviously better, but let's go and see what we can find. So we can see that this suspension arm has been replaced before. That was an MOT failure I had previously, so that's why that looks brand new. And if we come over to this arm here, it does look quite crusty. Nothing a wire brush can't sort out though, but these parts are cheap, so I might just replace it anyway. If we go underneath the car, we can see that this sill is actually not too shabby, to be honest with you. Just wire brush it, get some underseal on. Again, the rear suspension arms, they can all be sanded down, or I can buy new ones depending on how much money I actually have. If we look at this arm too, that will need sanded down. But if you actually come back here, we can see this part actually is rusted out. So you can see the mudguard should have a clip on the back. It is wobbling because it's rusted out. That will need replaced at some point, and it does feel quite brittle. And as a side note, obviously I like to do my burnouts. You can see all the old rubber that's come off the tires sitting here, which is not ideal. I should probably stop doing them. And unfortunately, you can see I don't have the plastic cover that covers this because I previously had another exhaust where the tip fell off. All the exhaust fumes were going underneath the car, got so hot and it melted all this off. So I'll need to replace this at some point too. If we come around to this sill, this is the problem area, unfortunately. Look how rusty that looks. You can see it's kind of flaking, which isn't great. And if you actually come over this side, you can see the sill has unfortunately collapsed. I can literally get my fucking finger through it, which is not ideal. This will need welded properly and replaced at some point. We did start using wire brushes, but we figured out that this was going to take far too long. So in the words of the mighty Jeremy Clarkson,
I'm allergic to manual labour, so I used horsepower instead.
We got out the angle grinders and oh my god, this is terrifying. So we start sanding everything down and honestly it did not take long at all. It was quite a pain actually holding your arms up that high for such a long time, but we gradually got through it. And of course Tom has his top off and yet another TikTok. We eventually were finished with the angle grinders, so we needed to use drills with little wire brush heads to get to the really hard to get parts. We went back to using angle grinders with more fine heads on them to actually clean up areas where we previously had missed. So as you can see, I'm doing the sill again here. But now it's time to shake up the Rust-Oleum cans and get them ready.
God, he on X Games mode.
And you can see we're spraying it onto the bottom of the car everywhere we have sanded down. Now what Rust-Oleum actually does is it bonds with the rust and turns it basically into raw metal again, ready for undersealing. So we are done with the Rust-Oleum and I'm really happy with how this turned out. Obviously you don't need a really big thick coat everywhere, but it's just enough to cover all the rust that is loose underneath the car and on the components. So we left it to dry for 20 minutes and we started to apply the first coat of undersealing. Absolutely everywhere it needed to be covered to prevent any future rust, especially on that part of the sill and the other sills themselves. But we wanted to be as thorough as possible, so we didn't have to do this for another year or two at least. We also made sure to spray inside all of the chassis rail holes and all the suspension component holes too, just to make sure we got absolutely every single inch of the underside of the car covered. And we finally have the finished product here. I think this came out absolutely amazing. I'm super happy with it. So the car now should be covered for at least a year or two, even the bad part of the sill, to make sure that it doesn't rust anymore. Of course, the rear end of the car was also undersealed too. But it is now time for Zoe the MX-5 to return to Earth from orbit and make way for something much cooler.